Good evening. If you could find your seats in the room as we begin our program this evening. My name is Gregory Allen Thornbury. I serve in the capacity of president of the King's College here in New York City, and we are situated here on the corner of Broadway and Exchange here in the heart of the financial district. And so I think it's safe to say we could not be in a more obvious place in the United States of America for this evening's festivities. It is a privilege to serve here alongside a distinguished faculty, and tonight our highlight is on a very distinguished member of our business faculty, Dawn Fotopoulos. The mission of the King's College is to, here in the heart of America's financial center, to prepare students for careers in which they will help to shape and eventually to lead strategic public and private institutions in the world. And we know that those strategic and public-private institutions begin with small business, and that is the focus here this evening. Professor Dawn Fotopoulos is our special guest tonight. That's why we've been called together. This remarkable work that she has produced, Accounting for the Numberphobic, is something that is a godsend to so many people. There are certain things that everybody needs, but sometimes they don't often cry out for help for, and this book is, I would say, an answer to prayer to many people around the country. Dawn Fotopoulos has many different hats, but she's a perfect example of the kind of faculty member that we look for at the King's College in New York City. Many of you will have seen Harvard professor Steven Pinker's article in the Wall Street Journal last week, which is a part of a book. He talked about why academic writing is so bad, why professors can't speak in the language of the average person. And Accounting for the Numberphobic is an antidote to that problem. It is straightforward, it is clear, it is helpful, necessary, and strategic in our time. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in welcoming our guest of honor tonight, Professor Dawn Fotopoulos.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thornbury, for that wonderful introduction. Okay, can we leave dignity at the door just for 1 minute? Can we do that? 2 years, 10 chapters, 65 pages of a book proposal, 35 illustrations, 400 rounds of edits later, 1 broken ankle later, and here we are. Woo! I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy lives to be here and to celebrate something that we think is really important. And the book is just the tip of the spear, which you'll see in a minute. But it is an important introduction to a broader audience. And the name Accounting for the Numberphobic is like the longest title ever for any book. Accounting for the Numberphobic, a survival guide for small business owners. And one of the challenges, of course, was to define what does that word numberphobe mean. It's not a word you typically hear. So it actually came out of a survey that I used to do at the Levin Institute. A hand of applause for the Levin Institute for Entrepreneurship, which is represented here tonight. Thank you, Donna Russo. Thank you, Fast Track Program. And what I used to do, these were 5 to 9 p.m. at night classes. Small business owners would come in dragging their IV poles and taking this class, and I would take a survey, and I'd say, okay, we're going to do free association. I'm going to say a word, and everybody's going to write down their unfiltered thoughts when they hear that word. It's okay. It's like Las Vegas. Whatever you say will be here. No one's going to share it. You can share it anonymously. Here goes. So I'd say, accounting. And let me give you some of the feedback that I got, true feedback. Okay, this is in chapter 1. So one person said, makes me want to crawl into a fetal position and cry. That was one. Another one was, I'd rather spend the weekend with my mother-in-law. Okay? Another one was, I hate numbers, they hate me, it's mutual. But the common theme was either if we hate them or we don't hate them, we don't understand them. And a lot of times people would say, well, if I work hard enough, the numbers will take care of themselves, you know? And that's not true. And I can prove to you that it's not true because the very, very first time I gave a talk to the National Association of Women Business Owners, NAWBO. Sounds like a chronic ailment. Anyway, NAWBO, right? It was 7:30 in the morning, and they said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about I hate numbers, accounting for the numberphobic. And they said, really? People are going to run in the opposite direction. I mean, there's no way anybody's going to show up. I said, that's okay. 2 people will show up. It'll be the right 2. 3 days before I gave the talk, they called me up. They said, we hit fire code restrictions. We got to change the venue. 7 years ago. So I said, I think maybe we hit a nerve. So they're not just scared of numbers, they're terrified of them. But before we talk about the book, I want to introduce you to the inspiration for the book. Meet Rachel Lecklider. When I first met Rachel, she was Rachel Baxter. She was a student here at the King's College and is now a beloved alumna. She is the editor-in-chief of Conscious Magazine, which is the nexus between doing well by doing good. They have changed the conversation among millennials. And if you have any hesitation as to whether or not she is somebody of influence, the UN got a hold of her and asked her to give her testimony at the UN to an international group of millennials. I don't know about you, I do that all day long. She has a multi-million-dollar brand, but she doesn't know it yet. But she will know it. I love this guy. Look at that face. That's Mike Zumchak. Is that the cutest face? You know how I met him? I took an Excel class about, 5-6 years ago because I try to buff up my own, skills in the summertime. And here's this amazing guy in this little classroom over by 33rd Street. There were 3 people in the room. It was a 4-hour class, and he was off the map. He was so phenomenal. And I went up to him, I took him out for coffee, and I said, there's no way in the world you're making money doing this. There's no way, and the world needs to hear from you because you're that good. And so fast forward 5 years later, he is being flown around the world. When any investment bank needs an Excel jockey, an Excel black belt, they call this guy. And he is amazing, but it's really exciting to see the kernel of an idea flourish like this and to see somebody this talented do so well. And we actually did a video together. Am I still on the homepage, Mike? I am. Yeah, and he keeps me on the homepage because I close a lot of business for him. I'm a closer. Yeah, there was one lady in the class who said, I don't know who that woman was, but she was very compelling. True story. Okay, meet Laura Reddy. This very elegant lady is the personification of the spaces that she designs. And the first time I met Laura was at another Levin Institute class, a fast track class, and she walked in and she was very despondent. And she said, this is my last chance. If this doesn't work, man, I'm done. And she is unbelievably talented. And when she started to tell me some of her clients, these are household names, these are internationally known names, I thought something was really wrong with this picture. And long story short, after a few years of working with a collaborative group, Laura and I had coffee about 6 months ago, and she said, and first of all, she looked 10 years younger. There was a big smile on her face. They were tears of joy this time and not tears of frustration. And she said, I can't believe how easy this is. And the short answer is, there is nothing easy about what she's accomplished, but she is that good. And so we were able to show her a roadmap, give her a way forward. And what that really looks like is just getting down on our hands and knees, taking the shackles off of somebody's ankles, pointing their shoulders in the right direction and say, now, run the race you were born to run. And she has, and it's so thrilling to see it. Okay, if you live in Manhattan and you have an investment piece of clothing, typically what happens is you bring it to your local dry cleaner, they take it, they put it through a meat grinder, and then they hand you back the shards in plastic and charge you $150 for it. But not if you go to King Dry Cleaners. And this gentleman here, who could probably run General Motors, is Richard Aviles. And he is the heir apparent to a dry cleaning dynasty that started 40 years ago. And who you do not see in this picture is Victoria Aviles, who has convinced me more than anyone that height and stature are not correlated. She is a force of nature, this woman. She was head of the Brooklyn Metrotech Chamber of Commerce, and she is absolutely amazing. She will be in the Customer Service Hall of Fame with her famous line, "The answer is yes. What is your question?" Did I get it? Did I get close? It's close. Oh my gosh. Nina Kaufman and I go back a long time. I haven't met too many lawyers who are educated at the London School of Economic and Wellesley and are trained in stand-up comedy. And she is as bright as she is beautiful, and she has a multi-million-dollar brand too. And we're in the process of watching that come to fruition as she helps many people build their million-dollar roadmap. And I am honored to know her and thrilled that she's here, and so thankful that she did the interviews that she did early on. But she gave a keynote recently. People came up to her and said, "Oh my gosh, you're such a rock star." And that's right, she is. And now there are more and more people who are going to know that too. Don't you love that face? This is Nicole Hanley Mellon. She was a merchandiser for Ralph Lauren, very successful there, and she has taken a great leap of faith to become a designer. She has just created a new couture line that was featured a few weeks ago. I had the pleasure of going to the opening, and that lovely young model that you see on the right-hand side is sporting one of her great designs that was inspired by a trip to Kenya. And we're really excited about what she's doing. That line will launch, I believe, in the spring of 2015. Is that right? Where's Allie Hanley? Is she here? It's the spring of 2015, and we're very excited to see what happens there. Christopher Okada describes himself as a simple guy from Queens, and don't you dare believe it. When I met him at the Levin Institute, he too was a fast-track student, and he was taking over a kind of mid-sized, languishing commercial real estate business from his parents. And in the ensuing 6 years has turned this into a powerhouse. About a third of the buildings that you see on the right-hand side, he's probably done the deal. And he hasn't even hit his stride yet. I'm sorry he's not smiling, because when he smiles, it lights up the room. And this lady could be your neighbor. Her name is Frances Licio. She is a botanicals photographer and a true Renaissance woman. She can talk to you about the vicissitudes of Balzac and also what kind of bone meal to put in your iris garden so that they would come up nice and perky next spring. Now, what you cannot appreciate on the right-hand side, take a look at that beautiful, can you see it, by the way? Is it too bright in here? Should we lower the lights maybe a little bit? That was the cover of Wellesley magazine. And what Fran does is she goes into her garden and she picks all these little flowers and little buds. She goes into her studio, she turns them upside down and backwards and scans them on a high density scanner, and that comes out. And I think it's absolutely spectacular. And I have to tell you honestly, if I did the same thing, it would not look like that. I mean, Hermes would die to have those kinds of designs on a screen-printed scarf, right? Or Martha Stewart on tabletop. She also has a multi-million-dollar brand and has no idea, but she does. And one of the things you do not know is this lady is almost singularly responsible for Numberphobic ever seeing the light of day. She happens to be my first cousin. And I wrote the book proposal on spec. I shopped it to a couple of places that got turned down, and before I threw it in the wastebasket, I called Fran. I said, "Oh, Fran, I just want somebody to read this, just to tell me, if there's anything really here. And she passed it along to a number of her colleagues and friends. Among them was Liza Dawson, Deborah Englander, and then ultimately Robert Nurkind of Amicom Books. And never in my life have I seen transfers happen so professionally. It never got lost. And it landed on Bob's desk, and he gave me a call, and he said, "You worked really hard on this book proposal, didn't you?" And I almost fell off a chair. I said, "Oh my gosh, somebody knows. Somebody's paying attention." We had almost an hour-and-a-half conversation, as I recall, that very first time. And I am deeply grateful to him because he took a shot on an unknown author. And that's a tremendous amount of risk for a publisher. So the question, of course, is why the book and who's going to benefit from it. I want you to know I did every possible thing to avoid writing this book. I knew it was going to be a big chunk out of my life. I had no idea how much work it would be, but I suspected, and I did everything to avoid it. I started a blog. I wrote 500 blog posts. I wrote blog posts for Cox Communication. I did training videos. I promoted everywhere I could promote, and the drumbeat was still the same, and it just got louder year after year. You got to write the book. And what became clear was when we were at the Lebanon Institute teaching the Fast Track program, which is it is the platinum standard actually in the United States for teaching small business owners how to run their companies, that whenever we would get to the numbers, people would shut down. Social media, marketing, dime a dozen, a million people out there talking about this stuff, but when it came to the numbers, everybody, not only did they shut down, but there was a lot of shame around it, like, I know I should know this, but I'm embarrassed to admit it. And when my accountant speaks to me in Swahili, I'm not going to tell him that I don't understand. But meanwhile, I'm spending money on social media, and I'm tweeting all over the place, and my financials are in flames. So when we took a look at the people across the board who were in these classes, they were consultants, and they were fashion designers and dentists, and when you really think about your life, our lives are steeped in the services of small business. Think about that. The person who takes care of your car and the plumber and the electrician. That's who these people are. They are an integral part of our ecosystem. They hold the quality of our daily lives in the palms of their hands. And I love them, I respect them, and I care deeply about the fact that they have sustainable businesses because we cannot afford to lose them. There was a woman in one of my classes who taught pole dancing for fitness. Yeah, true story. And at the end of the class, everybody had to do like a presentation of their business. It was mixed company. We told her to keep it G-rated. But meanwhile, the way that she measured success was how many babies were born 10 months after people took her class. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of effort, a lot of investment around startups. Have you noticed that? The Lean Startup, startup schools, all the incubators, Shark Tank, right? A lot of effort around startups. But who's with the people in the trenches 3 years into the dream that now is becoming a nightmare? 5 years, 10 years into the dream. They're in too deep to get out. They owe too much money. But they're not where they need to be to support their households based on their cash flow. Who is out there helping them? And there are millions of them. So let's take a look at what's really going on in the marketplace. And we did this research before the book before the manuscript was written. Jim Blasingame, who has had a radio show for 20 years, recently interviewed me. He's in 40 major markets. He was very funny. He said, "I'm the Hotel California. You can come, but I won't let you leave." He said, we're on the same mission, and we are, because he too understands that understanding how to read your financial dashboard is absolutely foundational to building a home that can stand. And he said something that was very profound. He said the failure rates used to be 50% of small businesses failed in 5 years. Now they're failing faster. 50% fail in the first 4 years of operation. Gallup has a very interesting poll recently that said 30%, we have 30% fewer small businesses forming than we did 20 years ago. So if you put those two stats together, it says not only are businesses failing faster, but we are replacing them at a slower rate, which supports the premise of this book that we've got to do everything we can to support the businesses that are already up and running because they've already absorbed so much of the startup risk. So we believe that small businesses are responsible for at least 60% of new job creation. And even if we're helping solopreneurs, the ecosystem that solopreneurs support is unbelievable, whether it's webmasters and lawyers and accountants and bookkeepers and personal assistants. They support an enormous ecosystem that drives our economy. And I took a poll. I've been a panel moderator for the New York Times American Express Small Business Summit Conference for a number of years. And I would say over 5 years, I've probably seen, 3,000 small business owners. And I always ask the same question. True or false, a P&L and a net income statement is the same thing. It's a true statement. 99 out of 100 of those people did not know that. That's not a problem. That's a crisis. Because if they don't understand that, then how much is so important, how much of what is so important do they not understand? So we can only speculate that whether it's cash flow management or whether it's gross margin, they don't understand any of it. So we are on a mission. And the mission is to cut small business failures in half. Oh my gosh, it's huge. But what if we could do that? You tell me, what would happen to those households? What would happen to those communities? What would happen to the U.S. economy? Is this going to happen overnight? No. No, but the way we're going to get there is we're going to promote financial literacy, really unsexy. But the good news is we can make it sexy, and I'll show you how in a second. But the first step is accounting for the numberphobic. So Fran Licio, who I wish you could meet, she actually has the flu. Fran, I know you're watching. We've been talking about this book for a long time, and I said, I need to make accounting funny. I need to make it funny. It can be really funny. It can be really dry. And I have to find an illustrator who can help us do this. And she said, oh my gosh, I've got the right guy for you. And his name is Ron Bucalo. Ron, where are you? Are you here? I know you were here. Yeah, give the guy a hand. So I would draft a chapter, and Ron and I would sit at one of the coffee shops, and I'd say, okay, here's the concept. How do we illustrate this for people who are creative types? Because the book isn't just, it's not a standard accounting book, and the truth of the matter is it's really a book on business strategy, and we're using financial statement analysis to get to that. But specifically the creative types, the fashion designers, interior designers, architects, photographers, how do we engage them visually so that all of these ideas in the book land somewhere concrete? And the truth is, every small business owner needs to answer 3 key questions. It all really boils down to those 3, and they are you making money? Do you have enough cash to pay the bills? And are you building or destroying wealth? So one of the things that I'm excited about with the book is that the book takes really complicated topics and just breaks it down, so that you can digest it and understand it. So we use the financial dashboard as a metaphor. We took something that we thought was familiar to most people, driving a car, and we used that as the bridge to something that was unfamiliar and intimidating, namely the net income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet. And the net income statement as your speedometer, how fast are you generating profitability? Cash flow statement is like your gas tank, right? How much gas do you have in your tank? How far can you go? If you're driving a Hummer, probably not too far on a gallon of gas. And then your balance sheet like an oil pressure gauge. And then I said, okay, what other analogy, what really is this book designed to do? because this book has a mission and a purpose. So I said, there is this one scene in The Wizard of Oz that really captures what we want to achieve with the book. And so let's play it right now. This is one of the last scenes when they get into the inner sanctum to meet the wizard.
Do not arouse the wrath of the great and powerful Oz. I said come back tomorrow.
If you are really great and powerful, you'll keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz? You ungrateful creatures think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
You are?
So you know what the book is? The book is Toto. That's what it is. Jumps out of the basket and runs over to the curtain and pulls the curtain aside, and all that's really there is a little man with white hair from Kansas. That's all it is. So what makes the book different? Yes, we have, I think successfully, thank you Bob Nurkind and Debbie Posner, who is also not here, my copy editor, but we have succeeded in making a dry and brittle topic humorous, because life is funny, and there's an awful lot of pathos in the stories, because behind all of these concepts are all these stories of a photographer and a baker and a service provider. And these are people that I've met through the Levin Institute in many cases, or I've met when I've given talks, and their stories are captured in these pages. And of course the names are changed, but they're real life stories, and I really pray that they become inspiration for people that are going to be reading this book. The key about this book is that it is a clear roadmap out of darkness. That for people that are confused or scared or working way too hard, it is a step-by-step way to get out of the forest and into a wide and flat plain where they can finally see their way forward. So the lady who took my portrait, one of my students, Peter Freeby, where are you? Said I look like my portrait. Thank you so much. That was very gratifying. Because most of my students are looking at me saying, she doesn't look like that when she teaches class every week. So the lady who took my portrait is a small business owner, and her name is Denise Zitzman, and she happens to be my older sister. And she's very talented. She does beautiful, beautiful work. Her stuff should be sitting in the Metropolitan. It's so great. She's in the Midwest. She's in the wrong market, but I digress. I had my portrait taken by a guy in New York for, purposes like this, and I looked ill. And I don't think I'm all that vain, but it was bad. So I called Denise. I said, Dee, you got to make me look like Diane Sawyer. So we went there. The shots were just fantastic. She did a wonderful job. We're having coffee after the shoot was over. And I said, so, how's the business going? And she started to cry. And that's a bad answer. She said, I am killing myself. I've been at this 19 years. Think about that, a lifetime. I'm at this 19 years, and I have nothing to show for all my effort at the end of the day. And I said, that's an outrage. I can't accept that because you're so good at what you do. And if the answer is we need to change something management-wise to make this work, then let's do that. If the marketplace is saying it wants what you have, then let's figure out how to do it so that you get adequately compensated for it. Isn't that the key? Yes? Okay. So I love these little guys. When I'm having a bad day, I flip the book to these guys. They make me happy. So Jane Applegate of the Applegate Group asked me to do a video, and it was about cash flow management. How do you improve cash flow? Because cash is to your business as blood is to your body. Without cash, your business dies. So one of the key ideas that I fed to Ron was, how do we convey this idea that if a client owes you a lot of money, that you shouldn't send them an enormous invoice, big honking invoice that makes it very difficult for them to pay you. You know, the ideal is you take that invoice, you break it up into smaller chunks, you invoice them weekly instead of monthly, and it helps their cash flow, it helps your cash flow too. And it was very funny because the photographer that was shooting this was an Aussie, and he stopped the camera in the middle of the shoot, and he said, it's true. I said, what's the matter with you? He said, yeah, you know, I'm an independent contractor, and a friend of mine who's a photographer told me I should be invoicing on a weekly basis, and it really totally helped my cash flow. I said, get in front of the camera. What are you doing back there? So anyway, I said to Ron, I said, how do we give this sort of visual, this compare and contrast of, you know, instead of one invoice, you know, break it up in a few invoices. So he came up with these little guys, and they're all over the book, and they're doing all kinds of things. They're high-fiving each other, and they're jumping up and down, and they're under microscopes, and the microscope is the bank. And but it makes me really happy to see them. And I guess the real goal was to say, you know, you can't remain numberphobic when you're smiling. You can't remain frightened when something inspires you to dig deeper and pay a little bit more attention. So what we tried to do with the illustrations, and I am so thankful that Fran introduced me to Ron, is to create an inviting place where people can come and they can see and they can learn and they can apply very simple ideas that can change their futures. So when you're trying to, this would be a really great illustration to show our policymakers in Washington who do not know the difference between revenues and net income. Revenue, so I'm talking to Ron, and I said, you know, how do we convey the idea that revenues, there's this great big pile of money, and net income is what you're really in business for, but it's that teeny tiny little pile of money at the end after you pay all your expenses. How do we convey this? So he came up with this just brilliant illustration. And most people do not know. This was actually part of the debate in the last presidential election that unfortunately never really came to the fore. This idea that, you know, no plumber makes $200,000. Okay, earth to policymakers, if a plumber is earning $200,000, they have to pay insurance, they have to pay overhead, they have to pay rent, they've got to pay equipment, they've got to pay their people. That plumber's not coming home with $200,000 in all likelihood. The difference between, right, revenues and net income. So chapter 10 is an interview with an incredible man. His name is Norm Brodsky, and he was the CEO of City Storage in Brooklyn, very successful entrepreneur, who has also known the darker side of entrepreneurship. He's gone bankrupt twice, and he speaks with great wisdom and authority about this topic. And it was just a gift from God to be able to sit down with him for 2 hours. I asked him one question, and he just went off to the races. And all I did was transcribe pretty much what he said in that conversation. And I took out the 4-letter epithets. And that's pretty much chapter 10. But the one thing that he said at the very beginning of chapter 10 that really broke my heart, but I know it's true, is he said, half the businesses that are going bankrupt don't have to. He said if they knew this basic stuff, they would survive. And a lot of them really have great ideas. So what are some of the key topics in the book? To improve gross margin, improve cash flow, this idea of break even, that take it out of the classroom and out of that sort of clinical way of presenting it and make it come alive in 3 dimensions. So I was having my hair done. I told him to make me look like Diane Sawyer. I looked like Margaret Thatcher by the time he was done. And as he's teasing away, he said, you know, there's a store for rent right across the street, and it's 1,200 square feet, which is probably the square footage, the footprint of just one of these seating areas. He said, I couldn't believe what they were asking for the rent. What was the rent? $19,900 a month. A month. And so we were speculating, what kind of business could get into that space and carry that kind of fixed cost and make money, right? Remember those little piles of money? And make money at the end of the day. So we were speculating, and he said, I think only a nail salon. And then he stopped for a minute. He goes, that's pushing a lot of cuticles. Yeah, no kidding, okay? But this idea of break even is the sleep at night factor. It's the sleep at night moment. You know, how many cuticles do you have to push before the business is self-sustaining? You know, how many photographs do you have to take? How many products do you have to sell? How many clients do you need to have? And if most small business owners have no idea what a net income statement is, they certainly don't know what break even is. And it's really important that they know some of this key stuff that's captured in the book, because they will learn to speak the language of bankers, they'll learn to speak the language of investors, and nobody should borrow one nickel unless they understand this. So this was a video that was taken at the American Management Association. Marina Theodotou, is she here? No, she was going to come. I'm not sure. But she is my connection there. She is head of the finance and economics practice at the AMA. And she somehow found the book floating around the AMA, and she said, I need to talk to you. And of course, it didn't hurt that she was Greek and I am Greek. And so that's the Spanakopita connection. And she reached out to me and she said, I saw your book. I said, oh, great. She said, you want to do a webinar? Yes. You want to do a webcast? Yes. Do you want to do a live Q&A? Yes. Do you want to do, what do you need, Marina? So this was one of the videos that we did, and the AMA is really quite amazing as a strategic partner because they have reach. They have true global reach. They've been around for 100 years. I am deeply grateful for their support and collaboration. The last webinar we did was about a week ago. We had 500 people on the webinar. They were from every major continent in the world. And then the content becomes evergreen. So it's, you know, it's up there forever. So this was just one small snippet about mistakes small business owners make.
Most small business owners think that if they get more customers, they'll make more money. But if they're not making money now, if they're not profitable now, and they get more customers, it's highly likely that they're scaling an unprofitable business. But if you can't read your net income statement, you don't know that.
So we did 3 of those, 3 like that, and I'm sure we will be doing more. And what eventually will happen is there will be seminars and additional webinars that will come from this. But I was just a featured author on the Kauffman Foundation website, and they were just thrilled that the responses were so lively. And whatever questions and Q&A we don't get to on the webcast, I am then publishing the answers on Best Small Biz Help, so people have access to it. These are some of the strategic partners that I have been in dialogue with in the last month and a half. So when I am not at the King's College, this is what I've been doing. Direct Capital, 33 Voices, the Millennial Solution, Jim Blasingame, Barry Maltz. The Huffington Post is going to publish the first article. I guess it's late January, and there'll be more coming behind that. Chic CEO, yes, it does exist. They have a great and loyal following, and Stephanie Burns is the CEO there, and a great lady, and we're very interested in working with them. Intuit is having a QuickBooks Connect conference. It is the first ever in Silicon Valley at the end of October. I will be there. I've been invited to go. I'll be a mentor to small businesses there, and they said, we're very excited about your book launch. We want to know more. So that thrills me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a very big deal. And the people from Sumall that are here in Silicon Alley, one of their big investors, a gentleman named Dane Atkinson, is somebody I've known for many years. And he said, this is a very exciting time. This is a great project. I want in. So November the 10th, I'm going to have a conversation with him, and I'm going to ask him if his investor group will support free downloads of this book so we can get it in as many hands as possible. Yeah, it is quite exciting. And the Amazon feedback has been great, and I will tell you that it really matters. So everybody in the room has a book, and I want to give a very special public thanks to Lee and Allie Hanley, who are on our board. Lee is the president of our board of trustees. Allie sits on our board, and they purchased these books so that we could give them to you. And the best thank you that you could give them would be to read the book and to write a review on Amazon and on Goodreads, because people really do read it. And the best part is when somebody I don't know reads the book and writes a report. Then I know we've really hit pay dirt. But some of the really great responses have been as follows. This book is essential reading for anyone in any size business. A great way of engaging the reader, making the information understandable, which of course was one of the great missions of the manuscript. And Ann Hendershot, who is a colleague here, really blessed me when she bought the book. I had no idea she was going to do that. And she said, I've been numberphobic forever and grateful for the advice. And she said, I'm a good teacher, an excellent teacher. But I have to tell you, I realized after going through the hard exercise and the discipline of making the manuscript that I'm in the aha moment business. I'm really not a teacher. I live for those moments where information drops deeply in somebody's soul and their eyes got big and their jaw hangs slack, and everybody who's a teacher in here knows that moment when you go, I got them, and they'll never be the same. And so where to buy the book? Amazon, the normal players, right? Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Indie Books. We have a link on Best Small Biz Help as well. And so here's the best news. We've started a campaign called Know Your Numbers, which is the kickoff, and tonight is the kickoff for the Know Your Numbers campaign. If financial literacy is going to make the difference, then we got to start somewhere. And we have started tweeting about this. I want to thank the Conscious Magazine people, Lacey and Rachel, so much for their support in social media to get this word out. Please give them a round of applause. And what we are going to do for the next 10 months, yes, it's going to be busy, is we're going to take each chapter, and 1 month we're going to focus on the content of that chapter. I will have Google Hangouts. Barry Maltz, Mo Abdu of 33 Voices, Stephanie Burns, Gabrielle Jackson of all these other organizations, Jim Blasingame, Jim Beach, have all said the following: we're in. So you just tell us what you need and we're there. So each of these people are going to be interviewing me on some core ideas from each of the chapters. I will have a Google Hangout where we'll have the opportunity to do the deeper dive, because it's one thing to sell books, it is quite another to have people engage with the content, which is really important here, because transformation won't happen unless that occurs. So are you on the mission with me? Yes? Say it loud. Yes. Great. So the best thing you could do, and that's why we have the cards with you, with the books, just as a reminder, follow me on Twitter, because then you'll see all the things that are happening. You'll know where to find the Know Your Numbers campaign. You'll know how to refer people who are in business and who are struggling to this information. It's really important for them. Please do write a review on Amazon and Goodreads. Read the book, of course. We're not going to tell you how many stars to give. Vote your conscience. But it does really matter if you do that. And we're asking you to tell 10 people, because if Seth Godin is right, if you have 1,000 loyal people following you, you can reach 1 million. And the goal is to reach and turn around 1 million small businesses. So there was one lady who heard about the book. She's a small business owner. And she said, all my Christmas gifts are taken care of. I'm going to buy 20 of these, and I'm giving them to everybody that I know, because I know so many people that are starting businesses or struggling in businesses. So that was a great encouragement. I thought, great idea for tonight. And then there is an assessment on Best Small Biz Help. You know, if people really don't know, where they stand, we need to benchmark them. So there is an assessment, and we are going to be promoting that link. It's just 10 questions, true, false, and they get actually a report based on what their results are. And that, of course, is the little Sputnik to get you to the link to take the assessment, and it is on your card, so it makes it nice and easy to find us. So thank you for being here, for being on the mission. We have just started. This is just the beginning. I truly believe the best is yet to come. Thank you. I would like to thank some people who have made this happen. Dr. Thornberry and Dr. Kimberly Thornberry were amazing supports for this event. And I want to thank the King's College that has been incredibly gracious and generous with their time and their facilities here. So I would like to thank them publicly, and also our student ambassadors, all those wonderful people that helped guide you up to this place and fed you and watered you and loved you. I want to thank them very, very much. And would you raise your hands, please, if you're a student ambassador and you helped tonight? Carolyn and Rosalind and Leah. I would also like to thank our Assistant Vice President of Academic Affairs, Ina Kumi. She is a colleague in the business program. She also is a friend. But it was a really tough time getting that manuscript done. And it was tougher after my ankle broke. And I would get emails at midnight saying, keep plowing the land, when the rocks were heavy and my arms were weak. And I owe her a debt, and I want to thank her. I also want to thank Dr. Anthony Bradley. Where are you, Tony? Are you here? There you are. We share a wall. We're wall mates. And for 5 years, no joke, at least 5 years, right? He would come into my office and he'd say, you got to write the book. And I gave him 1,000 excuses not to do it. And then periodically, he would come into my office with a visual aid, and he would say, you can do this. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank my family, my wonderful sister Madeline, my niece Nicole, and my nephews Scott and John, hello, for being here. My parents couldn't be here, but in the early days of Bedazzled, when I didn't know half of this, they really saved my life, and I want to acknowledge them. They're not even watching the live stream because they don't have a computer, but they will watch the taped version of this. I want to thank also Mo Abdu of 33 Voices. I want to thank Jim Blassingame, Jim Beach, Stephanie Burns, Gabriel Jackson, so many people, Jane Applegate, Larry Janeski, Norm Brodsky, and April Vergara, who works, is a senior vice president for HSBC, and she is chapter 8. I cornered her, she's so busy, and she gave us such fantastic wisdom. I could not have asked for more. So, and for all the people that prayed over this project, I want to also thank Jody Wood, who was there in the very early days when we held seminars, and she said, this is important, I want you to pay attention. And I have, and I really appreciated her support in those early days. So at any rate, does anybody have any questions or comments? We have a community board here. Please don't leave without putting a blessing or your comments on there, because we're going to take a picture of it and save it, and we may end up tweeting it out. But in a minute, I'm going to have a book signing. If you'd like your book to be signed, I'd be happy to do that, and we'll do that right outside in the hallway. Any questions or comments? Yes?
Dawn, congratulations on your on your book.
Thank you.
And ironically, I was just into it myself. My question to you is actually, you bring up so many important issues. I have a much broader question for you. The financial system has changed significantly. By the way, I'm Clara Del Villar from the Hispanic Post, just so that you know. And I've been writing a lot about the Hispanic entrepreneur in the United States and the business owner. But my question is, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the financial system has changed significantly so that community banks have disintegrated substantially in the U.S. What is if you can comment on the availability of capital to the entrepreneur, what have you noticed how that's changed in the last few years and how that impacts the issues in your book?
It's a very good question, Clara, and I don't know that I'm the font of all wisdom about that very deep and complex question, but I can speak to some of it. The drumbeat or the meme is that the reason why small businesses are failing is they're inadequately capitalized. And I've been in the trenches 15 years with thousands of small businesses of every stripe which you saw. And it's been my experience that it's not the lack of startup capital that's the problem. The problem is the inability to manage the cash that they do have. So if we can improve profitability, they become self-financed essentially a lot sooner. I think the dynamics that you're saying are occurring, and it's a problem, but if we can shore them up so that the businesses become self-sustaining where they don't need as much outside capital, we can help mitigate some of that. I do believe that there is an awful lot of capital sitting on the sidelines waiting for good ideas and waiting for people who know how to speak their language. David S. Rose was on my panel when I was at the New York Times Small Business Summit Conference, and he said when he invests in a company, he wants 200% return. Oh, thank you, Carol. He wants a 200-fold, not 200% return, a 200-fold return on investment, and he wants it in 3 years. So if you don't have a roadmap to get there, don't even bother having a conversation with this guy. But there's money there. We need to teach them the basics of how to get started on the right foot. Here's the thing. I mean, what we're really doing here is an intervention. Do you see it? For businesses that have already been around. I know at the Levin Institute we do a lot of interventions, certainly in growth venture. But what if we could get these businesses up and running in the right way at the beginning? I mean, what is that? Founders, I think it's Founders School, is the largest incubator in the United States. They're in, I think, 60 major cities. They have an 87% success rate of new business startups. And they reached out to me 48 hours ago and they said, we're on your mission. We need to talk. So they really do get it. So unfortunately, what I'm doing isn't going to change the dynamics in the banking system. I do think that the banking system has become almost like hedge funds. They're taking on so much crazy risk. A lot of these community banks are going out because of that. But what we can do is we can utilize the private capital a lot more effectively, and that's the mission that we're on. The other thing, too, I know somebody asked me this recently. They said, how come women's small businesses make 50% less in revenues than their male counterparts? That's another meme that you hear. And there is no chromosomal advantage that men have to run a small business than women. But what you find is women tend to go into, or let's put it this way, there's a large majority, sort of skewing female in things like multi-level marketing organizations. And in MLM organizations, it's maybe 1 or 2% of the people in the organization actually do make money. There are a few organizations that are quite successful, but they also tend to prefer part-time businesses. If you're raising children, your time is really constrained, so that's certainly going to affect what your revenues are. Also tend to be in more retail-driven businesses that tend to be lower gross margin. So there are reasons why that's the case, but if you take a look at the risk, the attitude about risk, women versus men, terrible to make generalizations, but if you take a look at it, men tend to be less risk averse than women when it comes to borrowing money. And so I think that if we taught everyone the language of business, how to read their income statement, their dashboard, right? Income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet, and they can keep score on what's going on in the business, then they don't have to fear it, and then the business isn't running them, they're running the business. And the real holy grail is when they begin to understand this stuff, they can begin to predict where the business is going to go. So the decisions that they're making today, they know how they're going to affect the business in the future. That's when I know we've hit pay dirt. And that's when I manage myself out of a job, which makes me very happy. But it's a wonderful question. Thank you, Clara, for that question. Any other questions or comments? There is one more thank you, and it's a very important thank you. Rich DeVos Sr., who was one of the co-founders of Amway, who has been a tremendous supporter of the King's College, wrote a spectacular endorsement for the book on the back cover. And I hope he's watching. I don't know where he is, but I want to say before we close for the evening, thank you for the bottom of my heart, because his endorsement is world class, and it makes all the difference in the world to have him behind this. So thank you so much again. We're going to have the book signing, and stay as long as you like. But again, thank you, thank you. Be on the mission with me. We can really bring hope and a future to these people, and this is the first step. So thank you again.